Good morning, friends. Myself, Dr. Nidhi Darbari, in my education treasure. Today, in my present video, I am going to deal with characteristics of a lesson plan. When you go for teaching a lesson in the classroom, usually you get prepared for, though informally. But sometimes you find that you were not able to teach the entire content which you prepared, or on the other hand, the content to be covered is not sufficient for full period. Sometimes you may get stuck up while teaching and so get nervous. Maybe that you are not aware of the objectives of teaching a lesson and so did not bother about its attainment. How to overcome all such problems? This can be done through systematic lesson planning. You get a chance of thinking about all these problems in advance while planning your lesson and deciding about taking corrective steps for possible hurdles. The process of developing a lesson plan is such that these problems get tackled automatically. Now we come to the lesson plan. A lesson plan is a teacher's detailed description of the course of instruction or learning trajectory for a lesson. A daily lesson plan is developed by a teacher to guide class learning. Details may vary depending on the preference of the teacher, subject being covered, and the needs of the student. There may be requirements mandated by the school system regarding the plan. A lesson plan is the teacher's guide for running the particular lesson, and it includes the goal, that is what the students are supposed to learn, how the goal will be reached, that is the method or procedure, and a way of measuring how well the goals was reached, that is test, worksheet or homework. We can say that lesson planning is important because through lesson planning the subject is organized properly. It keeps the teacher free from the faults of thoughtless teaching. It makes the proper atmosphere for learning process. The teacher also gets a clear idea about when they should start evaluation and when they should proceed to the next lesson. Lesson plan helps in organized teaching and saves time. Lesson plan allows the teacher to apply appropriate strategy. Teacher will be more prepared and confident while teaching the lesson. The first point is, when should we plan a lesson? Avoid planning lesson several days or week ahead of time, because a teacher will not be aware of the students' needs or what problems they might be faced with that at that particular time. It is best to plan lessons daily and bring them into class, because as the lesson is progressing, that is as the students are interacting with the teacher and with the language they are studying, things evolve and develop depending on what has happened and what is happening moment to moment, and this way the teacher has a better and more accurate understanding of what students need to focus on in future lessons. Now we come to, why should we plan a lesson? Lesson plan is essential because it helps the teacher to conduct his or her lesson in an orderly fashion, and it allows students to know what they are going to be learning and how it fits into the course syllabus. Students also feel that the lessons are sequenced properly. Having a good lesson plan will also increase confidence in the teacher. On the other hand, not having a plan will result in complete failure for both teachers and students. In addition, a detailed plan clearly demonstrates that teacher has taken the time as well, put in the thought and efforts into making the lesson. The teachers who do not produce a lesson plan are often lazy or feel that they can create a lesson, known as jungle path lessons, based on what is happening in the room at that moment. This can sometimes work, but to continue to never have a lesson plan proves to be ineffective. Besides, your students will become frustrated and feel a sense of negligence or carelessness on the teacher's part, as well as not getting their money's worth. The next point is planning detailed lessons will avoid problems in the class. This will give the teacher confidence that they have done their best to plan for any eventuality or at least minimizing some problems. It is important to note that lesson planning is a thinking process, not the filling in of a lesson plan template. Lesson plan envisaged a blueprint, guide map for action, a comprehensive chart of classroom teaching learning activities, a systematic approach for the teaching of concepts, skills, and attitudes. While planning a lesson plan, the needs, capabilities, and interest of the learner should be considered. It should be prepared on sound psychological knowledge of the learner. It should provide a new learning experience, systematic but flexible. And it should be related to social and physical environment of the learner. Setting objectives. The first thing a teacher does is create an objective, a statement of purpose for the whole lesson. An objective statement itself should answer what students will be able to do by the end of the lesson. Harry Wong states that each objective must begin with a verb that states the action to be taken to show accomplishment. The most important word to use in an assignment is a verb, because verb states how to demonstrate if accomplishment has been placed or not. The objective drives the whole lesson. It is the reason the lesson exists. Care should be taken when creating the objective for each day's lesson, as it will determine the activities the students engage in. The teachers also ensure that lesson plan goals are compatible with the developmental level of the students. The next is selecting lesson plan material. A lesson plan must correlate with the textbook the class uses. And lastly, lesson planning and tools. Making use of technology is an absolute best way of meeting the target of the lesson plan. Teacher can use various technology like projectors, computer, internet, etc. to give that interesting learning atmosphere to the students. Now we come to the characteristics of an ideal lesson plan. Learning to plan is just like any other skill. It takes time and practice. At first, lesson planning may seem like a time-consuming process, but by creating detailed lesson plans as a beginner teacher, one is able to develop routines that can become more automatic over time. The first characteristic is objective-based. Lesson plan should be written in a form based on one or the other objective. While writing this, general and specific objectives should be defined clearly, because its main objective is to achieve some goal or goals. Through lesson planning, the teacher will be able to pinpoint for himself the objectives of teaching that particular lesson. The objectives should be such that they are attainable during a span of one period only, and in sequence with the objectives already attained by the learners. The second characteristic is decisions about appropriate material aids. The material aid is an important means of the teacher. Hence, correct decisions regarding the chart, graphs, Pictures, diagrams, and maps should be taken while preparing a lesson plan, and these should be marked at proper places which a teacher is to use them while teaching. A good lesson plan should present good linkage between the objectives, teacher and student activities on one hand, and the method, the teaching aid, and evaluation items on the other. The third characteristic is based on previous knowledge. An ideal lesson plan should be based on the previous knowledge of the pupils. This will avoid any difficulty in acquiring new knowledge by the pupils. A continuity component reviews and reflects on the content from the previous lesson. The next characteristic is division of lesson plan into units. Lessons are of three types: knowledge lesson, skill lesson, and appreciation lesson. In an ideal lesson plan, all the relevant steps of these three types of lesson plan should be determined. Also, each lesson plan should be divided into suitable units so that the pupil may understand the lesson gradually. The plan should neither be too short nor too long. The next characteristic is simplicity of language. In an ideal lesson plan, the simplicity of the lesson plan and clarity of thoughts should be according to the mental level of the pupils. In other words, the lesson plan should be subject oriented, not language oriented. Determination of activities is the next characteristic. In an ideal lesson plan, it should be made clear what activities a teacher and the pupil are to perform. In other words, in an ideal lesson plan, the activities of a teacher and the pupils should be determined beforehand. The activities planned should be quite interesting to the young learners. The teacher will discover whether the subject matter is adequate enough to be transacted during the period. He will identify in advance the activities to be carried out by the learner. Subject, time, class, average age of the students should be mentioned in the plan. Use of strategies, tactics, techniques, and supportive teaching aids is the next characteristic. In order to prepare an ideal lesson plan, the teacher should gain the knowledge of maxims of teaching and general principles of teaching. Only then he can use appropriate strategies or methods, tactics, techniques, and aids in order to classify the events and facts which occur in different situations. The lesson plan should relate to suitable teaching method and its use. In a lesson plan, the techniques and supportive material of education like charts, maps, and other audio-visual materials and its utilization should be written. The next characteristic is correlation. In an ideal lesson plan, a possible balance should occur. This enables the pupils to acquire the knowledge as a whole. It should focus on specific piece of content so as to attain the competency in hand. Use of illustration is the next characteristic. In an ideal lesson plan, such important examples should be used which have the relevance with the daily life of the pupils. This depends upon the comprehensive knowledge and experience of the teacher. The next characteristic is individual guidance. In an ideal lesson plan, it should be indicated how and when the teacher will provide individual guidance to the students. Teaching from memory level to reflective level is the next characteristic. In an ideal lesson plan, developmental and thought-provoking questions should be asked. Also, there should be an effort to stretch the teaching from memory level to the reflective level. Time sense is the next characteristic. An ideal lesson plan should be prepared keeping in view the mental level of the pupil and the duration of the period. The time assigned for every teaching step should be appropriately predetermined. Subject, time, class, average age of students should be mentioned in the lesson plan. The next characteristic is use of Blackboard. The development of the Blackboard summary should be proceeded with comprehensive questions. The Blackboard summary of each and every unit should be written on the Blackboard immediately after teaching it in small but complete sentences. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, I request you all to please give a like to my video to motivate me, share it with others and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. The next characteristic is evaluation. In an ideal lesson plan, there should be mention of the method of knowing the influence on the pupils. This also evaluates the method used by the teacher. Also, the pupils will take interest in learning. He will be able to anticipate the expected answers of the learner. Homework is the next characteristics. There should be provision of homework in an ideal lesson plan. This will enable the pupils to learn the application of the acquired knowledge. The last characteristic is use of inspirational or motivational methods. It should focus on the development of a clear understanding among children instead of rote memorization. Inspirational or motivational methods should be experimented in lesson planning. I have always realized that when you start teaching, it is 90% planning and 10% management. But for an experienced teacher, it is 10% planning and 90% management. If having developed a set of effective management skills and teaching routines, having experienced how to be resourceful with very little, and above all, having learned to trust your learners, you are ready to fly on your own. It is then that you will experience the unbearable lightness of teaching. Important examples should be included in lesson planning. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video and don't forget to comment.